All right, now Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has now issued a new statement where he has urged Jews not to remain silent on the Ukrainian crisis. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky has said, and I quote him here, "Nazism is born in silence, so shout about the killings of civilians." He's also accused the Russian President Vladimir Putin of wanting to erase Ukraine and its history. Zelensky has also condemned Russia's strike on the site of the Babi Yar Holocaust Memorial. So it's been a week since the Russians invaded into Ukraine. The Russian troops have now made inroads into Ukraine from all sides. So let's get you the latest in terms of how Russia has mounted this invasion. And let's start from the north, where the Ukrainian forces are holding off Russian troops from advancing towards the capital city of Kyiv. This after Russia, in the initial days of the invasion, had managed to capture Chernobyl nuclear power plant and also the Hostomel airfield. In the northeast, there's another front that's been opened where the current target of Russian aggression is Kyiv. This is, of course, the second largest city. Reports have said that Russian paratroopers flew into Kyiv at about 3 o'clock in the early hours of the morning. And so far, in the intense skirmishes that have taken place, at least about 21 people have been killed and 112 others have been wounded. Meanwhile, from the Donbas region in the east, it is an area that has been controlled by the Russian-backed separatists for several years. And the liberation of this area is what Vladimir Putin has in fact used as a pretext for invading into Ukraine. And finally, in the south, we have the Crimean Peninsula under Russia's control since 2014. From there, the Russian forces have advanced towards Kherson, which reportedly has been taken over by Russia today, according to the claims that have been made by the Russians. All right, now to give us a better perspective in terms of how long Russia is willing to prolong this invasion to Ukraine, we are joined by Mr. Andreas Umland, who is a political analyst from the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, and he's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Mr. Umland, this is what we know in terms of how the Russian invasion, of course, is going. On the very first day, Russia had made some remarkable progress. They were virtually on the gates of Kyiv. But since then, Russians seem to have met a lot of resistance from the Ukrainians who are defending their homeland. How long do you think the Russians would in fact be willing to prolong this invasion?
I think they want to finish it as soon as possible. And the question is now how far they're going to go in terms of applying raw military power to achieve that, and perhaps even to terrorize cities like Kyiv and Kharkiv. We've seen already signs of this, namely the bombing of residential areas. If Russia decides to behave like it earlier behaved in Syria, in cities like Aleppo, Homs, and Idlib, then Ukraine may at some point capitulate if we have large air raids of residential areas. But I still hope that this will not happen. And if it does not happen, I don't think it looks good for the Russian troops, because the resistance in the Ukrainian cities will be fierce.
Right, and also in terms of how the West has, of course, responded to this crisis in Ukraine, do you think the West has done enough? Because initially, the West was a little reluctant to slap Russia with some crippling sanctions, but now the West is also upping the ante. They're trying to strike at Russia, financially make it expensive to carry on with its invasion. Has the West done enough?
No, I think it has not done enough. As far as I know, the Russian gas and Russian oil is still flowing through the pipelines from Siberia to the European Union, and the money paid for that is apparently still being used for this invasion. It's a large chunk, the oil money is a large chunk of the Russian state budget, and the gas money is important for the functioning of the entire Russian economy, because Gazprom, the gas monopolist, is subsidizing, is delivering subsidized gas to the Russian enterprises and also private households. So these energy deliveries play a large role in the functioning of the Russian state. And as far as I know, they are still continuing.
Now, in terms of what is happening in Ukraine, now there are some analysts who say that it is not Russia's game plan to in fact capture Kyiv, because if Russia were to do it, then it will be battling an insurgency, and from there on it will be difficult for Russia to extricate itself from this war altogether. Do you think at this point of time the reason why Russia has surrounded Kyiv with that convoy of almost about 40-mile-long tanks and other supplies is more to create a leverage for the Ukrainian leadership to negotiate on terms that Russia would find favorable?
Yes, that is obviously the aim. I think Moscow was actually calculating that something like that could be happening much earlier, that basically Ukraine would capitulate earlier, or the other option that Russia could depose by itself the Russian president, enter Kyiv, and then install some sort of proxy government. But all of that has failed now, and maybe the plan is now to have a sort of siege of Kyiv and to wait until eventually people perhaps will not have any foodstuff anymore in Kyiv, and then indeed Ukraine may capitulate. But that would be a long process, perhaps over weeks or even months, which is also with lots of risks for Russia.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Umlin, for joining us and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.